Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits is now open in Lincoln. Shop our expansive collection of wine, beer, spirits, and cigars at 5040 North 27th Street. From top-shelf liquor to crowd-favorite beer, Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits has a beverage for every taste and every budget. Plus, join our loyalty program to earn rewards and save on future purchases. Shop Wall-to-Wall Wine and Spirits at 5040 North 27th Street in Lincoln. That's 5040 North 27th Street.
Old School with DP and J.
I'll go back to the late great Wes Unseld, who always made these discussions based on meat. He would always
because I was a big brother and
right,
he looked like
right,
he liked to eat.
Right, he
Yeah.
based it on meat. He would say, well, "Listen, there's a couple of the top choice prime plays. There just aren't that many. If you get a chance to eat prime, you eat prime. There are folks that would rather have New York, and then there are folks that, quite frankly, are good with hamburgers and hot dogs."
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse?
Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam, ran right into the side of the saloon.
Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Finally, a good reason to have a smart house. Just say, Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket, and we'll magically start playing. How's it work? Nobody knows. Don't ask questions.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Papa, why can't we telegraph while riding a horse?
Son, there ain't no one to blame but Jeffro. He was riding old Betsy the Stallion, tip-tapping away at his telegraph, when blam, ran right into the side of the saloon.
Well, if Jeffro can't do it, neither should you. Don't text and drive.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids. First, I hold my hands out like they're on a steering wheel. Then I look over my shoulder. Next, I put it in reverse. Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
This is Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. The home of Kansas City Royals baseball. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket. Live from the 93.7 The Ticket studios in the heart of Lincoln, America. This is Inside the Huddle with Nebraska Football Hall of Famer Jay Foreman on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
Good morning on a Sunday. Early, always. That's why I like the early bird gets the worm. Like I said, it's Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. I want to say thanks to our first sponsor, Advanced Medical Imaging. It's located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard offers treatments for all types of pain and rehab. If you want to get back to experiencing as little as pain as possible, give them a call today at 402-484-6677. They are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I will be promoting them. Also, they have area's best interventional radiologists to treat pain using minimal invasive techniques, which is really good for me because I try to stay off the surgery board or surgery rooms and on the board. And then they also have, for patients that experience extreme pain, some other options to kind of alleviate that. And then also come up with a really, really detailed plan before surgery is inevitable. So we want to thank them. We'll be doing some more live reads throughout the show. But it's Inside the Huddle, man. And obviously, if you know, two things have been huge this week. Actually three. And before we get into any sports, I want to send our condolences to Darren Dietrich and his family, former Husker running back, passed away a couple days ago. Long, strong battle, I think, with cancer. He was Nebraska's first Canadian recruit scholarship. Running back went on to do some good things here in Nebraska, and then obviously professional. Really, really well loved up there in Toronto and Montreal, but more importantly, he was a good person, good teammate. So I want to send the condolences out to him because anytime that life hits you hard, you don't want to kind of gloss over that with this sports thing because we always like to say there's things that are going on a lot bigger than sports. Now, obviously, the other big thing this week, Harrison, was the submarine.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to make light of that just because of people unfortunately passed away. I got for whatever reason, people ask me whether I would get in there. Listen, Jay Foreman does not really like water. Okay. I'm not Michael Phelps in the pool. So if I'm out in the ocean, I'm definitely not Michael Phelps, and I definitely wouldn't have got in there. I'm not, I wouldn't say claustrophobic, but I just not something that the Titanic was good on a movie.
Yeah, I've seen it. That's where I land. I don't know. Like, I believe it's down there. I don't need
It
to.
is down there.
I don't need to go check it out. I know it's there.
And there's other real submarines that have been down there.
Yeah.
It's 2 hours down there and 2 hours out or back up. And that's if everything goes right. But the thing about it is you couldn't see anything and you couldn't, there wasn't any chairs or anything like that. I guess the only way that I would get on a submarine, just because my uncle's in the Navy and he's, been on tons of them and stuff like that. He's pretty high ranking, is be on one of them.
Yeah.
And he's like, Jay, that's like a hotel. You wouldn't even know the difference. I mean, seriously, there's so many people on there. It's like a full on like little mini like town or city.
Yeah, and I think in the one they went down, weren't they separated in like separate pods? Like, I don't think they're all in one room, are they?
Yeah, I don't know. Once they said you're like bolting you in there and you can't get out, it's like no.
With one button and a controller,
and you had a PlayStation controller. So for the gamers, Rico, Amon, that'd be like,
that's my first red flag.
Yeah, I got plenty of confidence in Amon and Rico on the sticks, right? If they're playing Call of Duty or any type of games that Amon is, teaching, kids down at the university how to get better at, Fortnite and all that stuff, NBA 2K. I know they could. I'll put them up against anybody, but they are not controlling my submarine.
No.
And so you want to say that. And and then also the big news, obviously, throughout this weekend, probably some stuff that's going to break either in the next rest of this day, which is Sunday, June 25th, or, in coming days afterwards is recruiting. The last 2 weekends have been huge in the recruiting for Matt Rule and staff, and then obviously as the team is moving forward, and then they had a commitment yesterday as a JUCO defensive end, so we'll dive into that and how he fits and the body types are starting to kind of start to look kind of more uniform, and what they're trying to do, and the possibility of getting a huge commitment from another in-state kid that was supposed to originally go and commit to the defending 2 times national champion, Georgia Bulldogs, and see if that, changes hand. And then obviously with the Daniel Kalen finishing up with the Elite 11, doing really well. And I think, I guess officially he was an Elite 11, right?
Yeah, finished 10th.
Yeah, so
overall.
10th, which is good. And then also with 2 of his teammates from his high school team committing this week. It's been a pretty busy week for Matt Rule and the recruiting staff. To be honest with you, something that was kind of under the radar, Harrison, I wanted to ask you this, was our Western QB, Luke Longville. He decided to walk on at Nebraska. And obviously I think it's one, he has some sort of college experience. He's at a, JUCO, close proximity. So they should have a little bit more intel on him. But to get him to walk on, which I'm assuming he might have he had other offers and maybe at smaller schools, he actually probably saw an opportunity here to earn a scholarship. Maybe obviously not to start over Jeff Sims, because if that was the case, he had already been here. But to earn a spot and beat some people out, and to take the risk to walk on, not the risk, but it's a financial obligation.
Yeah, he could get a scholarship probably somewhere else.
Right? And so that's letting you know that when they're, which I'm hoping and assuming is when they are approaching people about walk on, it's just like, hey, you want to walk on and just throw things up in there and see if it works. This is your opportunity. Right now, we might not have scholarships available here, but if you maybe hit these checkpoints, this is what it could become. One of the Matt Rule's most famous walk-ons is Hassan Reddick from, now he's with Philly, but, at Temple. And the reason why I know about that is because my best friend, Sean Bryson, was a GA with Matt Rule, and he talked about how Matt Rule had an eye for talent, developed Hassan, and obviously led to being a first-round pick, so forth and so on. He'd been an all-pro this year, and obviously tremendously involved in Philadelphia and their run, to the Super Bowl and eventually losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, but he was dominant player. Now you got a quarterback here and see how it goes. And if I'm Marcus Satterfield, you just never know. You never know what guy is going to really raise, their level of play in your system. And so I obviously it's not as big as David Hall and McMorris, obviously. But I think it's huge because quarterback is a big need for us just magically, right?
Yeah, we talked about that a bit already. The number 2 quarterback, we still don't really know.
We won't know that until Minnesota, August 31st. They'll start talking about the depth chart. What about 6 o'clock? Probably, everybody. That's when we'll really know who's number 2, and then realistically, you really won't know who's number 2 until number 2 is called upon to go into the game. And
then we still don't know. It depends how they do.
Yeah, you still won't know because it could be based on a certain package, right? And here's the example. So say, Nebraska drives all the way down there and they have a package for Heinrich Harburg, kind of like a RPO, like exclusively type of deal, which
kind of like Smothers in that Iowa game.
Right. But Jeff Sims can do it. And it's the red zone only. That doesn't necessarily mean that he's number 2, because just say Jeff Sims, hamstring cramps up or something like that, and Purdy goes in, that we'll see. And I think it's going to be a fluid situation. But when the more guys that you can add to the quarterback room, obviously Daniel Kalen and walk on, will put the pressure on everybody to continue to improve. But it's a big weekend for Nebraska and company down there. And, I think they have 7 commits already. I think they did a really, I want to ask you this, it was really actually not unique, but it's a good idea where you're doing a lot of peer recruiting, right? And that's what's huge because it's word of mouth, right? And what a lot of people, when they ask me about recruiting, and particularly in-state recruiting, what we're going to really get into and probably pull back some onions and maybe make people cry or peel back the onion, make people cry a little bit, is in this day and age, it's a lot of peer recruiting. It's a lot of word of mouth, and word travels, right? And so strategically, if you think about what Matt Rule and those guys did, you got Ed Foley, special teams coach, he's primarily focusing on kickers and punters and the snapper. Well, his first, once he got that done, he was riding, he hit every school in Nebraska. So when he's out in Timbuktu, they're probably not going to have an athlete that's going to come to Nebraska even as a walk-on. But all these coaches know each other. They all go to like coaching conventions and stuff like that. So he's building up the initially of the goodwill by word of mouth, and obviously hit a lot of local schools. And there was a story that there hadn't been just in I think Lincoln High, a Nebraska coach hadn't been down there, or maybe it was a head coach, maybe it hadn't been down there in over 10 years. So from the stadium, that's can't be more than 3 miles. It's not even that. And 5 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, there's no reason why they shouldn't win.
And they've put out some kids going to different places. And so, because Nebraska tried to jump in and get their wide receiver, defensive back that's at Iowa State now. So, that's what they did. And then on top of it, they're doing a little, it looks like they're doing peer recruiting because of the 14, well, at least 14 official visitors that we know about.
Yes.
Because I think they always have they're like covert official visitors, right? People didn't even know he was on campus, and boom, he ends up committing. It's 7 and 7. 7 commits with 7, that aren't aren't committed. And you already saw, fruits of the labor here, where the JUCO edge, James Williams, who's also recruited by my man Steve Martin, right? A 10-year plus defensive tackle in the NFL that I got to play with. He's actually from Missouri. So I talked to Steve about him actually last night, and he's like, Jay, this kid's a worker. He's 6'5", 235. He's like, he'll be 260, and you won't even know that. That's just how he's long, he's fast, he's linear, he's stronger than what his frame looks. And he's a tough kid, and he's like, Jay, he wants it. I mean, that's all he thinks of, at least right now, right? Because that's all you can go on. Right now, that's all he thinks about is football and how to be better. And he came to JUCO with a plan, and he really progressed. And he was a late bloomer, where Steve was coaching him in high school, but that relationship is there. And Steve is really, and Steve went to Missouri. Unfortunately for him, he went to Missouri. I held it against him for a little while, but we've gotten past that. And but Steve talks highly of him. It's a good get for Nebraska. But what I like is you look at Kay Whalen that's on campus right now. That made some plays in the spring game. And then you look at James Williams in particular, right? And then you look at how they fit into like maybe the edge or the edge guy or the fourth person that's on the line of scrimmage in this 3-3-5 defense, and potentially, obviously, in the nickel 4-man front, being able to rush. And if he can be athletic enough to kind of be off the ball and kind of be a secondary rusher as well, is long, linear guys that are active as far as in the run game, tackles for loss, and creating the different line of scrimmage. But these two, both of them 6'4" plus. Right now, both of them by over 230, 235. Ideally, you'd like to see if they could get 5 to 7 pounds by the time season starts, and then throw them out there and see how they can really, really cause havoc. And if you want, by no means am I going to say James Williams is directly comparable to this player, but when you think about the 3-3-5, for people that are probably a little bit older than you, Harrison, there's a player out of the University of Illinois, right? It's not Illinois, it's Illinois. Right? Long time ago, there was Kevin Hardy, who was more of a linebacker like me, but then there was Simeon Rice, who was built just like these two. Again, they're not even close to Simeon Rice. Simeon Rice should be is a Hall of Fame NFL player.
Right.
But when I'm talking about when I saw Simeon Rice play 4-3 defensive end, play a little bit in a 3-3-5 when he was in Arizona and Tampa Bay, that's what he was. He was looking, you look at him, he looked almost like a prey mantis out there. And, Simeon was, 6'5", 6'6", maybe 245, but he was really good once he got his technique down against the run, but was destroying offenses in as far as tackles for loss and sacking the quarterback. And he wasn't big like I played with Bruce Smith, 275, 280, 6'4", where Simeon was a little bit taller and linear. So that's maybe what you're seeing potentially to come in and then help not only with the recruiting classes, but obviously on the field. And when you think about the whole landscape of the 500-mile radius, they're doing a really good job of spreading Nebraska's name and obviously recruiting kids and then closing them as well. And that's what you like. You like kids to get on campus 1 or 2 times, unofficial, official. Not put the pressure on them, but also just say, look, man, this is where we're at. This is where we really want you. Do you want to be here? I think one of the biggest things that some people get the misconception about recruiting is you have to beg kids when you're in a position like Nebraska. Matt Rule's in staff, at least Matt Rule. I always say the staff needs to, look, you should be always on edge. And same
Mhm.
with Matt Rule, but they're not. They don't have to beg. They don't need. They do need you, but we don't. We want you, but we don't need you to where we're gonna really, unless it's like Dylan Raiola or something like
Yeah.
that. But normally, look, we're telling you what we want with you. We're offering you. Let us know. Or
Mhm.
just, we're not going to sit here and play these little kid games, cat and mouse games, and get pimped for other offers or star rankings and stuff like that. And then essentially you wasted their time and resources and yours as well.
Mhm.
Because, trying to build honest conversations with people probably is one of the best things that they've done, at least from what I've seen, the little I've seen. In a perfect example is Daniel Kalen, right?
Mhm.
Had to be bluntly honest with him. Look, he's a leader. Look, when you think about it, right? This thing about, I don't know when Daniel Kalen got the invite. I'm sure through his time with Warren Academy, he's been obviously on the radar, right?
Right.
But when you think about it, when he committed to Missouri, he had to commit and do what's best for him because he knew and obviously saw and was told Dylan Raiola is our number one choice, rightfully so.
Mhm.
No matter what anybody says, Daniel Kalen believes he's just as good as Dylan Raiola, but he had to face that reality, right, of being told by a coach at a school that he wants to go to, and also by a school, not this staff, but the previous staff that was offered by the quarterback coach, rescinded in ways by the head coach. And so it's never been this, hey, middle school, high school, I've been Husker Red, and then I went to the camp, and then they respected me.
Right.
Boom. You got to think Florida State offered him first, so then he did it. But the open and honest lines of communication with him, letting him know we still value you, but this is our number one, and he's the number one ranked player in your class. So there is some harsh reality there. But if things don't work out, we're gonna want you to come here, and it's not an indictment on you.
Right.
We only have room for one quarterback. But then fast forward, then he's like, okay, obviously things work out. He goes out to Elite 11, and then there he is competing against him. Don't think he wasn't thinking about that and having that in the back of his mind, because we've had other quarterback commits go there. Zane Flores went there. He didn't make the final 11.
Mm-hmm.
Daniel Kalen did. Now, does this mean Daniel Kalen's going to come in and be Dan Marino or something? No, but it's a
good start.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
It's better than somebody that can't hit the broadside of a barn on a 2-mile-an-hour wind day and can't play dead. So I mean, I think it's a good thing that they got going on down there in Nebraska. Is bode well. I'm sure that the emojis would be coming, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know who's the recruiting guy. Is it Omar, the Omar guy? Yeah. So I'm sure he'll be pretty active and jumping in pictures. I think he likes to take pictures and stuff like that. But look, with the way they're going about it, they definitely should feel confident and excited about where they're going. And then also that excitement, hopefully, still gets in and motivates the guys that are presently on campus. So that's the first segment. Inside the Huddle, again, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to dive deep into the change of the guard, change of the assumption, and a change of feeling on in-state recruiting. And it's great right now, and I'm going to really give an honest opinion on it, and then open some eyes on about that. But inside the Huddle, Jay Foreman. We'll be right back.
Hi, Sean Callahan here of HuskerOnline.com, inviting you to join us here on 93.7 The Ticket every Saturday morning now in our new time. We're on from 8 to 9 with the weekly Husker Online radio show. We'll give you the latest in recruiting. We'll talk about what's going on with both football, basketball, and we'll probably share a few stories from the inside. It's every Saturday morning right here on 93.7 The Ticket. It's the Husker Online radio show from 8 to 9 a.m.
Hey. It's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
I always had to be so good, no one could ignore me. carve my path with data and drive. But some people only see who I am on paper. The paper ceiling, the limitations from degree screens to stereotypes that are holding back over 70 million stars. Workers skilled through alternative routes rather than a bachelor's degree. It's time for skills to speak for themselves. Find resources for breaking through barriers at tearthepaperceiling.org. Brought to you by Opportunity at Work and the Ad Council.
Hey, you got any gum?
Yeah, check my backpack.
What's this?
Oh, that's naloxone. It can reverse an opioid overdose. I decided to always keep it on me after my friend almost died. It saved his life.
I'm so sorry. That makes me want to have it with me too.
You totally should. Check the pharmacy. It was actually really easy to get and it's easy to use.
I definitely will. Thanks.
Paid for by the CDC, sponsored by Nebraska DHHS, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Turning my pain into purpose is pretty much what I have done to start this foundation.
In August 2020, after the death of George Floyd, Bridget Floyd and other family members established the George Floyd Memorial Foundation in support of the Black community.
It's going to take more than just us as a foundation. It's going to take the community, the world, to make a change.
Fight for racial justice for the Black community. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
Our lives only have so much time. But if you smoke, you have less. Your life could be 10 years shorter. And the time you do have is often filled with health problems. Shortness of breath, asthma, COPD, and cancer. But the minute you quit, your body starts healing.
Call the Nebraska Tobacco Quit Line, 1-800-QUIT-NOW, 1-800-784-8669. Paid for by Tobacco Free Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Adoption of teens from foster care is a topic not enough people know about, and we're here to change that. I'm April Dinwiddie, host of the new podcast, Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Each episode brings you compelling real-life adoption stories told by the families that live them with commentary from experts. Visit adoptuskids.org/podcast or subscribe to Navigating Adoption, presented by Adopt US Kids. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services Administration for Children and Families and the Ad Council.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de the Alzheimer's Association y the Ad Council.
Came to the building for the first time after the shooting. It was crippling, but it had to be preserved.
In response to the Pulse nightclub shooting that affected the LGBTQ community, Barbara Poma, owner of Pulse, founded the One Pulse Foundation to honor Pulse victims and survivors.
If you're an ally of this community, speak out. There are more of us together than apart. It is the power of love in its rawest form.
Join the fight for LGBTQ acceptance. Learn how at lovehasnolabels.com. Brought to you by Love Has No Labels and the Ad Council.
Back to Inside the Huddle, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging. Here is your host, Jay Foreman.
We are back. Second segment here, Inside the Huddle. Jay Foreman again, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, located at 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. All types of treatments will give you a really clear game plan, which obviously, you know, we're going to talk about recruiting. The game plan is clear. One thing that I liked about Advanced Medical Imaging, it gives you options for pain management and it does replace the opioids and pain medications that often carry dangerous and uncomfortable side effects, you know, and, you know, when you, for me, when, you know, I would say this, when you get done playing, your body it's crazy. My body hurt more after the second year that I was done playing than it did while I was playing. I think your body just like kind of changes, right? And then as you get older, you know, the things that, you know, you're like, oh, you know, that's a little, you know, that's something I kind of battle through when I was playing. They're like, oh no, it just magnifies to the tenfold. And it's hard to find people that will help you without just trying to fill you with opioids and drugs and stuff like that. And there's one thing to do it, right? And there is a need for it within reason. But you've seen a lot of, especially athletes, that sometimes can go down the wrong path. And that's what's really was a fear of mine. I'm not big into any of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's because remember when Brett Favre, where he had his deal, and that, and even a little bit of stuff down there with the New Orleans Saints, where it could, you're doing it for the right reasons, trying to alleviate some pain. But if you start to like it too much, then you could end up in places you don't want to. So I always try to avoid that. And so, but also sometimes you go to some places and they don't tell you about the after effects or what your body can do to your body long term. And so was lucky enough to go in there. And really, to be honest with you, Harrison, I felt like I was desperate. It was like and still, they've cut the edge off, but I was hurting, and in your ankles and knees, and I got some really, long-term back and neck issues. They just kind of took a step back and let's say, hey, let's just try to put a game plan together, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's try to attack 1 and 2 before we try to do 4 and 5, or 3, 4, and 5. So I really appreciate it. And for anybody that needs it, they go and give you an honest opinion and give you multiple options, and then work with you along with this options, even if it's not directly with them, which is really good. And they have a band of, I guess, people that they work with as well, so they have good places to go. Because one thing is to give you an answer or answers, and then you walk out of there like, now I got more work to do. They do more work, so I appreciate that. But speaking of a lot of work, you gotta give it. As far as in-state recruiting, I was just asked about this. What's the change? Now, granted, I will say this, and this is the honest to God truth. And this is just being bluntly honest. Every year, when you get a new coaching staff, there's always an uptick in recruiting, always, because it's new. They're going to come in with their ideas, whether it's and most likely it's always going to be somewhat of the exact opposite what that was before.
Yeah.
Because when you get a job, at least I'm going to get a landscape of, okay, what did Harrison do well as a coach or a staff? All right, well, I'm going to make sure I don't do that when all the stuff they didn't do well. What's the overall assumption, right? Or what's the the negative on them? And when you're attacking recruiting, then you go and try to do it differently, or find a different way to do it that's more effective, or just do it your way, right? And there's always an uptick. But I will say this: I think it was a huge black eye and negative, even at times, with Bo. Even though that he recruited some players, I felt like, and I love Bo, and not love. I like Bo or whatever. His abrasive attitude never did anything to me, because I was like, I'd come right back at him, But I felt like he did I think as time goes on, he's one of the better coaches in Nebraska history. Not up there with Osborne, Devaney, and Solich, but
as of late, yeah, for sure.
As of late and all time, he will.
Yeah,
might be number 4, to be honest. Number 4, and that's not a bad place to be at a historic university.
No,
Osborne, Devaney, Solich, Bo, straight up, no question asked.
Yeah.
I always felt like they slow played in-state guys. Right. And what I mean by that slow playing is I see Harrison. Again, his biggest miss probably was Harrison Phillips. Other one is probably Drew Ott. We'll get into that when we talk about Carter Nelson. 8-man foot. I saw Drew Ott. I was out there. I was out in the middle of nowhere doing a speech, And this dude came up, and I'll never forget. He came up to me. He's a bigger guy. He had overalls on, just seemed, I guarantee you, he had some cow doo-doo on it. I mean, where it's like, it's just part of his boots.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't mud. You know what I mean? So he came and he said, hey, listen. I mean, they talked about Drew Ott out there like he was the Jolly Green Giant. It was like the what is that? That everybody would say they see the up there in like Washington.
Bigfoot?
Like Bigfoot. I'm like, man, he can't be this good. Yeah, I mean, come on, right? And Cam Jurgens was like that, but he's in Beatrice, so I could, see it.
Russ Hookstein, my hometown,
right?
Small school. I guess it was Class B at the time, but still.
Right. But Drew Ott was 8-man. I went and saw him, and the first thing I was like, holy, you know what? And now I see Nebraska didn't offer him. Again, that's the example of slow playing. Slow playing is like, I see Harrison. If say I'm slow playing or thinking as I see you, my eyes are telling me that you're a Nebraska player, But what I'm going to do is just hold that offer and hold that offer and hold that offer.
You thinking like no one else is going to see me on the radar yet?
No,
or you just holding it back?
no. But see, here's the way it goes: is if I don't offer you as the home school,
right,
that hurts your recruiting. So then, therefore, I kind of always got you in my back left pocket. See, I got the guys that I'm offering right sight unseen or right away. I'm down in Texas or Ohio, like where every coach has their like.
They got their pockets,
pockets,
yeah.
and that's where you're from. You know those players, you believe in them, and you've had success with them. I see you in Ohio, same player, Harrison in Omaha, Harrison in Maslin, Ohio. I'm offering you as soon as I see you because maybe I feel like okay, other school's going to offer you, but I got to make sure I offer you. Well, you in Nebraska, I'm just going to hold this offer here, hold it. Well, that's affecting Kansas State, Iowa State, Minnesota, anybody else that. If I offered you, would come in and just offer you just because, especially, right. And then if we're in the Big 12, those local schools like Kansas State, Iowa State, Missouri at the time, maybe Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, if you fit some scripts or whatever, they don't offer you. So now I got, now you got to work twice as hard. Well, at that point in time, 7-on-7 and satellite camps and all that stuff really wasn't at Paramount. Social media wasn't as big. So for you to grow your brand or you to really get out there, I, in a lot of ways, controlled your destiny and I slow played you, right? Now I'm still, when you're calling or your high school coach, I might be giving you still a conversation,
right?
But I'm not pulling the trigger. That's slow playing. What that does is that leaves bad taste in the mouth of that particular player, that particular part of the state, which the Metro had, and then you do that 2, 3, 4 times, right? Then you think, okay, the biggest one, Harrison Phillips. They was like, oh, we don't know where he fits. Well, you didn't see that he was, one of the best wrestlers of all time. So his weight wasn't going to be ideally what you think. It's because he's wrestling. But when you saw him play, you saw a dude that was, kicking ass, right? And then he goes to Stanford. Well, at that time, David Shaw in Stanford was a little bit higher. Stanford came here and got the toughest guy in the state. That's what David Shaw is always looking. I went for a tough. Got him. Harrison Phillips is still playing in the NFL, right? That's a big miss. And it was based off slow playing and not just taking the best football player, right? Well, then you look at, I think, one of Clester Johnson's sons. I think his oldest one was the state player, the Gatorade Player of the Year. Extreme. He was dominant when he played. His oldest son that ended up going to Wyoming and played with Josh Allen. I know that for a fact. I'm just not sure what staff it was. He didn't get offered by Nebraska, right? So just imagine if we're going up, right? And it was right.
Cade Johnson. I was just trying to find the name.
It was Cade, right? So imagine that Cade's a senior. You're his younger brothers. Obviously, you're in the house. But then imagine that if you're Cade, you're in Bellevue or you're in Omaha South, or you're just in the metro. All those kids know each other,
right?
And you see how good he is, and he's the Gatorade Player of the Year. So he's legit now. It's not like he's from way out there in Ogallala and nobody had never seen him. He's the best player in the state, at receiver. Nebraska doesn't offer him. That leaves a bad taste in the class behind him. Behind that, the coaches, the coaching staff, all around the metro. Then it'll trickle down to Lincoln. Right, because I'm sure the same thing happened here. So you talk about that, and then you do it again. Then Riley, I talked about it on Old School with DP when I called Mike Riley. Didn't even know him. I was like, this dude right here is going to be a first round pick, man. I've seen it. I've seen this before. Okay, and it doesn't happen all the time. I've seen it before. I've seen it when Andre Johnson walked right through the door or right through the practice field. Yeah, that dude's legit. Okay, Andre will be a Hall of Famer. Not saying no offense, but I know. Okay, some first rounders you see, like, yeah, he's fake first rounder. When I saw no offense, I said it. And I said it when I was on 1620 Zone with Damon Benning. I said, listen, I saw him play 2 games, and I heard about him. I saw him play basketball, and he was essentially running pass routes out there and dunking on everybody. And he was a legit, because I stood next to him. He's a legit 6'5". At that time, 225, 230, big old wide shoulders, long arms, and it was the fastest guy on the court, and he was the biggest guy on the court. And he was tough. By that, and then he goes to Iowa, and the rest is history, right? So I think that was Riley and staff. And then with Scott and those staff is a little different. They had a huge uptick in recruiting in general. Their big thing was like Florida and stuff like that.
Yep.
And the Ryan Held did a really good job with the JUCOs and trying to get, some guys that maybe, like with Maurice Washington and Omar and those type of guys, a little bit more boom and bust, but had to, try to bring an uptick in the eye test. Some of the I guess staff or some of the way it was opposed that Daniel Kalen or like somebody that was of that level, the first thing they would say to him, now mind you, we've been losing, okay? You get for decade, we've been getting our butt kicked, right?
Haven't been to a bowl game since
bowl games, went down to play Tennessee, and Derek Barnett went down the whole line. And I think Nick Gates was talking about he had nightmares about it. And then even when Bo was here, we were getting destroyed in big games. So it's been some time. But the last staff seemed like they were asking a lot of guys to walk on. See, like when I was there, and this isn't about the 90s or anything like that, it was like when you're winning national championships, kids would understand to walk on. Kids would actually probably play their high school career with the mindset to come in and walk on.
Yeah,
and
you trust the development.
Right.
You see it.
I mean, the Joel Macavickas, all those guys, the Matt Hoskinsons, all these guys that came in and walked on and ended up being great players, Brian Shaw and all these, that's just the way it was, right? Well, times has changed. And so if you don't have a clear reality of who you are, then you can kind of have that not so good cachet out there. But I think it's, Matt Rule, at least on the surface right now, they haven't been here a year.
Yeah.
So, you can't let's not anoint them as the recruiting gurus of the world, and we're overtaking Georgia and Alabama, but they've came in and created some excitement and also have held strong into what they do.
Yeah, they've been doing what they're saying. That's for sure.
And they've been working. And but they also feel confident enough about their ability to go recruit, obviously, Texas and have an eye for talent, unique talent. Obviously, they like track speed and all that because a lot of
Braylon Prude, 6'5", track athlete,
multi-sport athletes, right? Obviously tracking that. And so even though they're offering you, they're not going to allow you to pimp them. So it goes both ways, and you only can do that if you're confident in what you're doing and and what I mean by confident in what you're doing is what you're looking for. And we're offering you, and you have confidence that we're going to give you a good opportunity there. And so that's where you see like 3 in-state recruits, Kalen, Hall, and McMorris is really good. So you get some continuity there. Obviously 2 well thought of receivers for quite some time, 2 different types of receivers. So therefore, you're kind of, greasing the wheel on both ends. And then, and then when you think about what they have just from their 2024 commits, right? And you break it down by state, 5 of them are from Nebraska, 5 from Texas. So look, that's their like Texas, and hopefully they're making Texas and Nebraska their like stomping grounds. Obviously Nebraska first, but then there's 4 receivers, right now where they're at, and 4 offensive linemen, right? 2 linebackers, 2 DBs, and special teams, and obviously 1 quarterback. And so I like that. And you got a little bit of you look at Davon Hall, McMorris, Kalen, you kind of know what you get there. And then you got Ashton Murphy, who's a developmental guy. He needs to get a little obviously bigger. And then you got Donovan Jones, who's just coming on the scene as a 6'1", 185, probably most likely to be a safety, right?
Yeah, just recruited as an athlete.
But you can see the size, legit 6'1", 185. He can get up to, 95, 200. You like that. They even threw a punter in there, obviously. And then you could even say that Kansas in Cedar Falls, Iowa is right there. The big also is Landon Davidson this week. Really, really good, unique mindset, nasty. You like probably a guard, 6'4", 310. And then Prude that you mentioned from Pearland, right? Shadow Creek. My connection with Shadow Creek is this, Harrison. I'd never played golf before and played a couple times or whatever. And I could get it out the team. We had our like offense, defense golfing outing.
Okay.
Right. It was me and what was his name? He played a guard from Texas A&M, is Cameron Spikes.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, Cam Spikes. We played against each other, and so we're riding together. He had never played golf either, but I knew that you don't drive the golf cart close to the green.
Yeah.
I knew that. My ball was and we played at this Shadow Creek. That's why the Shadow Creek was like a course, right? And I remember just Pearland. So I was all somewhere looking for, I had a wedge with me because I knew there were snakes, and I was trying to find my ball, right? Turn around, and everybody's laughing. So it was me, Cam Spikes, Andre Johnson, and the other receiver. Man, he played at Florida, and they're all laughing, right? And I remember because Andre it was so hot, he had like a hat on, but a towel. It's like, well, Cam Spikes drove the golf cart up on the green. So that's my connection with Shadow Creek. But I know they play good football down there in Houston, because you got another Pyle, I think his name is there, that you getting another offense lineman. So I know what they're made of. And Flint, Katy, Texas is a well-respected national program. So you're getting a kid coming in as a tight end. Don't be surprised that, with his build, and obviously with his dad and his sister being as far as shot putters, that if he's not an inline blocking tight end, he could be kind of like a big 6'4", 265 kind of short area quickness tight end, and end up being an inline blocker, right? And if he has a really good time at the training table, could end up being a guard, but that'll be years down the road. But as far as in-state recruiting, I think, again, like we said, it's word of mouth, right? It's effort. It's FaceTime, as far as being there. It's, it comes to probably a lot of returning calls. And that's why I think the staff is probably, the staff isn't bigger, but I think Matt Rule has a bigger staff as far as analysts and all that other stuff. I haven't been close down there, but what I've heard. So it takes a lot of effort, right? And that's what you need. And that's what recruiting is. And it's having conversations, talking football with coaches, and a coach is a coach, being on the same level. These coaches are coming here in these coaches clinics, wanting to learn from you and get to know you, right? And try to take some of the things that you do to their programs, but they're also taking the initial perception that they're getting from you. And that's probably as important as the X's and O's. Because, look, a lot of coaches probably a little bit more too overconfident with their X's and O's. They really want the relationship, right? And if they have players, it might not be in 2023, 2024, but say Harrison, has a growth spurt, and you just have been throwing, hey, well, you might be a lineman that they could get. You might be a tight end. You might be like a Carter Nelson, right? And where him, we the crystal ball says it's coming to Nebraska. It's not official yet as far as commitment.
Yeah, I think it's like 8% Georgia right now.
Yeah, and 70-some% Nebraska, which is great. And look, we were talking off of air. Will he be the highest rated 8-man? If there's somebody else that have made an NFL, there probably might be eventually. Their end ranking was at. Initially, his ranking right now is probably the highest ranking 8-man football, I think, of all time. Tremendous athlete, a lot of potential. The adjustment will be from 8 to 11-man football, but I think with the way that he plays, the adjustment won't be that much, because and now he just needs to get better. He just needs to come here and play. I mean, you're not going to go from 8. I mean, don't think he's Rob Gronkowski finished product coming in as 18. No, he could really take off and get out there when he gets on campus.
He might even have 1 year of 11-man. I'm not sure. Ainsworth, they might have dropped down recently. I'd have to double check. So he could have a year.
Yeah, and he's going to do damage in between them hashes, man.
Yeah, period. He'll know what he's doing.
Yeah, so he's still going against Jay Foreman. He's licking his chops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think it's if you can get him, I think that is definitely a feather in your cap. And then the people that are in the recruiting department, you just got to keep going. Be confident, not cocky and arrogant, and just go about the business. Because I think that getting these guys here, then the pressure falls on the coaches, right? Deliver them the mail, and they got to read it and make it to where it's becomes a all-time bestseller as far as what these guys develop and get move into. And listen, let's be honest, also as well, the whole recruiting class and the way that this transfer portal and kids are built is, if you get 25 guys, it's not going to be 25 at the end of their tenure. Not everybody's going to work out, and not everybody's going to work out here. But the more chances that you get, the more recruits and talent that you get, it's going to work out for the University of Nebraska, and that's the most important. And so as far as in-state recruiting, I think they're doing a good job. What's the difference? New coaching staff, probably a very, very detailed idea of what they're doing, eye for talent, and not afraid to pull the trigger. And they understand we got to be early than late. That's it. And also the what do you call it if you return phone calls and texts? I don't know. That's just probably common sense.
Yeah.
A lot of common sense.
Yeah.
Right. Which a lot of times is the best sense. I got some teenagers that don't have a lot of common sense.
So, common courtesy.
Yeah, common courtesy is probably that, and they're doing a good job of that. And so that's a good segment as far as in-state recruiting. We'll come back with a short segment. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle. We'll be right back.
Working at Continental in Lincoln isn't a job; it's a career.
Old school now they've raised with DP and Jay.
I'll go back to the late great Wes Unseld, who always made these discussions based on meat. He would always
because I was a big brother and he looked like he liked to eat.
Right, he based it on meat. He would say, "Well, listen, there's a couple of the top choice prime players. There just aren't that many. If you get a chance to eat prime, you eat prime. There are folks that would rather have New York, and then there are folks that, quite frankly, are good with hamburgers and hot dogs."
93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket.
Okay, playing 93.7 The Ticket.
Alexa, turn down the lights.
Dimming the lights.
Alexa, order a pizza, the big one, all the toppings.
Are you sure that's a good idea?
Alexa.
That's a lot of pizza for just one man.
Alexa, just do it. Stop judging me, just do it.
As you wish.
Thanks, Alexa. You're my best friend.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 a.m, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The Ticket Water Cooler.
I feel like sometimes when we have Hall of Fames, and this is no disrespect to Frank or Gary Pinkel, who got in last year, the longtime Missouri coach. Shouldn't there be a different Hall of Fame for like Gary Pinkel and Frank Solich
like
and
the Hall of
Tom Osborne
the
and Bob,
Hall of
really
really good.
Right. But what, like you said, the distinction usually is first ballot, or unanimous or whatever. So that's usually kind of the distinction that you can make there.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
I'm Chris Jackmick. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is "My job is people, everyone is my business." But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jackmick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. Store all your guns securely. Help stop suicide. My service never stops.
Brought to you by End Family Fire and the Ad Council.
Veterans, do you know what local, state, and federal benefits and services you're eligible to receive? Do you want help navigating the application or appeals process? Speak to your county veteran service officer or the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs State Service Office to see what's available to you and your family. You've served our country, now let us serve you. Visit veterans.nebraska.gov today. Sponsored by the Nebraska Department of Veterans Affairs, aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Inside the Huddle with Jay Foreman, sponsored by Advanced Medical Imaging.
We are back. Short segment here. Jay Foreman, Inside the Huddle, again, brought to you by Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard. All types of treatments for any type of pain that you have, which I know a lot about, unfortunately, but they are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I will be promoting them from weeks on or from here on out. Appreciate their support. But as far as to finish up on recruiting, Harrison, is there was 13 teams out of the Big Ten this week that had at least one commit. Nebraska led the way with 8. Do you know who was the second?
Who'd be second? I'm trying to think. Teams got a lot lately. Would it be Ohio State?
Nope. I'll give you one more.
Iowa?
Nope. I'll give you one more.
Minnesota. Okay.
And funny thing, can you guess what position that they really hammered home?
I'm gonna guess interior offensive line.
Yeah, two big old offensive tackles, one from Florida and one from Wisconsin, which essentially is a extension of Eastern Minnesota, and then they got an edge, 2 edge guys. So they've had a good time. And guess who got 3 commits this week? The one team you would never guess, or at least in my guess, two teams you would never guess. Got 3 commits this week.
Indiana.
Yeah.
I wouldn't guess. Rutgers.
Yeah.
It's always the 2 teams you would never guess.
Yeah, and 2 teams that only got 1. Ohio State and Penn State only got 1.
Okay.
And Iowa got 2. Michigan got 2. Of course, Michigan got a running back.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might got 2 running backs, and Wisconsin got a running back, and I think Minnesota might got a running back as well. But I think Nebraska had 8, which is moving pretty good. I think their whole total comp ranking is 18.
Yep,
and,
18.
Legit 18, I think, on the 2 of them. So, or 2 rankings, which is good, and only can go up moving forward especially if they get the Ainsworth assassin. That's what we're gonna call him. Get him. I think they could probably get up there, creep into top 15. And then go from there, and then that'll probably give a lot of confidence. I always looked at recruiting as your class coming in, you got the ranking, but then see where you end up at, because I think a lot of that, depends on who stays, who goes, and who actually ends up, developing. And
and the portal and everything too. That
right.
number switches midseason.
It does, and I wonder if you could do something if you just do it on like graduation date. So if we're going along and then we pick up Harrison and Jay Foreman, that's in this 2000, that graduates the same time as 2024. Do you rank it then? But ultimately, you want to try to, if you get 20 kids in a class, you'd like to, keep, 12 that are contributors. And then you'd like to have, 4 or 5 of those guys being all conference. And obviously you'd like to have 1 or 2 All-Americans in every single one. But time will tell. But I think look at one thing Nebraska's done is recruit well. Again, their rankings at 18. Generally, they say that there was some like analytics thing. The amount of money you put in recruiting correlates to the class ranking, which ultimately wherever your class is ranked is where within 2 spots where where you should finish football wise. I wish it was that easy. But there was some truth to it, and that's if that's the case, Nebraska's doing a good job. I think one of the biggest things they need to do is just continue to stockpile some talent, but the right talent, right? Mm-hmm. I think one of the big things that these coaches have to, I'm assuming, are and have to do a good job of is not only recruiting the kid, you're evaluating the advisors in the high school program that he's in, seeing what he's made of. Does he like to compete, and does he love football? We got enough guys that like sweatsuits and steaks, right? Get those guys out of there, get some football players in. But again, fast hour at 7:00 in the morning on a Sunday, up and at it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We appreciate the support. Again, Advanced Medical Imaging, 7601 Pioneers Boulevard, 402-484-6677. We appreciate the support. We'll holler at you next week.